I was brought round after having been sedated for 4 or 5 days. I'd had bad pneumonia, and I woke up in intensive care. It was not a place I'd ever been before. And gradually, over the course of 4 days, to just put it at its most blunt, I got madder and madder and madder. I suffered from auditory hallucinations. In other words, I thought I could overhear conversations, which obviously I couldn't. I thought things were happening to me that weren't. Gradually, from people plotting against me in what I imagined to be the next room, very rich South Africans I thought they were, I gradually came to believe that the nursing staff had turned me into a zombie, and then the following and last night I thought they had decided to eat me. And whilst this has its kind of amusing side, the trouble for me and for anybody in this situation was that I absolutely believed it. This was my reality. And so I spent 3 to 4 days in the most abject terror of my entire life, and discovered subsequently that actually quite a large number of people do go through this, and many of them who've written to me subsequently have said that they had felt that they were the only people, that this was, in other words, having this experience written about meant that they could begin to talk about it because they had felt that it was something so peculiar and weird and obviously suggestive of mental problems that they hadn't really wanted to talk about it very much.
Because you wrote about it, didn't you, in this weekend's Sunday Times magazine?
In the Times magazine, yeah, I did indeed. And the response to that article is the biggest response I've had to anything I've ever written. I've had a lot of letters, some of them very affecting, from people who said the same thing happened to them. Some of their experiences, their imagined experiences, were actually worse. Some of them were quite funny. And there is this kind of mixture. And then from a number of doctors who said, this is very interesting, we do this at this hospital, we do that at that hospital.
Well, let's bring a doctor into the conversation. Gerlinde Mandesloot is a consultant in intensive care medicine at Barts and the London NHS Trust, and she's also a board member of a support group called ICU Steps. What David's just described for us, is that familiar to you?
It certainly is. About a quarter to a third of patients who go through critical care will have some form of delirium or ICU psychosis, as it's often known. And it is one of the more difficult aspects sometimes to treat and to manage. And as David has said, one of the sad aspects is afterwards, because people feel that it's got a mental health connotation to it, they're often petrified to talk about it to family, to other people, and make people aware of the problems that they're suffering.
So it's a recognised medical condition?
It is, yes.
What causes it then?
It's there are a huge number of causes that can lead to ICU delirium, including illness itself. There's no reason if the body gets ill why the brain should be protected from that. So severe illness in itself can cause it. Lack of oxygen to the brain, for instance, if you've got severe pneumonia and you're struggling to get oxygen in your blood, your brain will get affected by it. The drugs we use to keep somebody comfortable and sedated to allow us to do the more complex things in intensive care, especially if we start reducing those drugs, they can cause delirium. Other issues that tend to happen is that because sedation takes away your normal day-night rhythm, you can get very sleep deprived as soon as you withdraw the drugs. And we see that often these symptoms become much worse at night.
David Aronovich, did you have any idea that this might happen to you?
No, I had absolutely none, but then I hadn't expected to go into intensive care anyway. But my wife also had no idea that this was what was happening. And the way in which she describes it, she said that she was essentially told, well, this will pass. Well, actually, over 4 days, it got worse and worse and worse. I hadn't slept for 4 days. I imagined that if I shut my eyes, then the inside of my eyelids would have scenes of bloody battles and so on, so I couldn't allow myself to do it. And then gradually, over the course of those 4 days, my delirium got more and more terrifying. And so and one of the things I really learned about this, which was so interesting to me afterwards, was that to me, I'm the ultimate rationalist. I've written an entire book debunking conspiracy theories. In my own mind, I am the great sane man. And I remember thinking on the night that I thought the staff were turning me into a zombie, I thought, I would never believe this if I wasn't seeing it and experiencing it with my own eyes and ears. In other words, it was as real to me as having this conversation is now.
Gerlinde Mandesloot, do you ever warn people that this might happen to them?
It depends on where you're coming from. A lot of times if patients come into intensive care, it is because of an emergency. And they're often so ill already that it's impossible to warn them about, or even if you tell them about this, that they won't remember it at all.
Is there anything staff in intensive care can do to prevent this?
There's things we can try and attempt to prevent this. It's not 100% guarantee, but in the amount of drugs we use, the type of drugs we use, we can alter. We can try and screen once you start reducing sedation. You can screen patients to see if they're at risk or actually have ICU psychosis. And then, as David has said, we can give antipsychotic drugs to try and ameliorate or even get rid of the symptoms. And one of the other aspects is to try and return a normal day-night routine as soon as possible and get patients to sleep.
David Aaronovitch, you write that this changed the way you think about madness and about people who are dismissed as deluded and mad.
Absolutely. I think I'd always believed, without actually stating it, that people, the famous lunatic on the bus and so on, that people who had delusions were in some way capricious, that they kind of decided to believe in this warped version of the truth. What I now quite clearly see, in a way I didn't before, is that they fully believe the world that they see. And that continuously saying to them, as I believe some of the staff did to me, what you're saying doesn't make any sense, it would be better actually to say to them sometimes, tell me what it is that you think you see, take me through it, explain it to me, let's get it out there, and so that we can talk about it.